Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an adventure. In the mud and chaos of the trenches, a soldier struggles with numb hands, desperately trying to coax a spark from a stubborn match. The cold bites deep, and the rain is relentless. Fast forward to the present, and a modern survivalist faces the same unyielding weather, but with practiced ease scrapes a ferro rod, igniting a cotton ball in an instant. The challenge remains, but the tools and the confidence have changed. All right, WARFRONT Survival. Let's talk about a moment of truth that every soldier, from the Somme to the Ardennes, from the Pacific Islands to the Russian steppe, has faced. It's not an enemy charge, not an artillery barrage. It's the creeping, quiet enemy of the cold. Your uniform is soaked through, the rain hasn't stopped for days, and that deep internal shivering starts to set in. Your life, right then, depends on a tiny, fleeting flame. But the methods to create that flame, the tools in your kit, that's where a century of survival science and brutal experience separates the 1940s dogface from the modern bushcrafter. This isn't just about making a campfire. This is about understanding fire as life itself, and how the struggle to create it defines an era. That moment in the game where you're frantically clicking, trying to get a spark to catch in the pouring rain. That's not just game mechanics. That's history. For a World War II soldier, a successful fire could mean the difference between drying your socks and getting trench foot, between warming a can of stew and eating cold rations, between a night of miserable shivering and the onset of genuine, life-threatening hypothermia. Their fire-starting kit was often rudimentary, a mundane part of their gear that became the most critical piece in a survival scenario. So let's break down what they had, why it was a struggle, and compare it to what we consider standard today. Because understanding this hierarchy of tools and tinder is understanding a fundamental thread of survival, from the front lines to the backcountry. For the world wars, the primary tools were centuries old. The flint and steel set, a classic, was a backup for many. You'd strike a hardened piece of carbon steel against a sharp flint rock, shaving off white-hot particles into your tinder bundle. It required skill, a perfectly prepared nest of charcloth or ultrafine dry material, and in damp conditions it was a test of patience and fine motor control that cold, battered hands often failed. The real workhorse was the match. But not your modern stormproof matches. We're talking about standard-issue friction matches. These were vulnerable. A damp matchbook was a catastrophe. The strike surface could wear out, the match head itself could crumble. Soldiers learned to waterproof them by dipping them in wax or storing them in airtight tins, a small but vital piece of personal fieldcraft. The lighter of the era, the wick and wheel style, was present, especially among officers and pilots, but fuel evaporation and soaked wicks made it unreliable in extended field conditions. The common thread here is vulnerability to moisture and a reliance on tinder that nature didn't always provide dry. Jump forward to today, and our baseline has shifted dramatically. The ferrocerium rod, or ferro rod, is the evolution of flint and steel. Scraped with a hard steel striker, it throws a torrent of 3,000 degrees Celsius sparks that are, quite literally, burning metal. These sparks are not only hotter than traditional flint sparks, but they're also water-resistant. You can strike a ferro rod in a downpour and it'll still throw a shower of fire. It's a one-handed operation that can be mastered quickly. Couple that with modern butane lighters, especially pressurized models like plasma lighters or even sturdy Bics, and, well, we have an embarrassment of riches. The modern survivalist's advantage isn't just in the tool, but in the marriage of that tool to scientifically prepared tinder, which brings us to the unchanging universal law of fire starting. Whether you're a paratrooper in Normandy or, say, a hiker on the Appalachian Trail, fire always obeys a non-negotiable hierarchy. You begin with an initial ignition source, your spark or flame. That must catch a tinder, a material that, ignites with a single spark or the slightest flame and burns hot and fast. That tinder then ignites your kindling, small twigs, wood shavings, which in turn ignites your fuel, meaning larger split wood. The failure to respect this hierarchy is, quite frankly, why so many fires fail. Historically, soldiers had to scrounge for whatever they could find. Birch bark, if it was available, was a godsend. Its papery layers contain flammable oils that will light even when damp. Fat wood, the resin-saturated heartwood of pine trees, was another treasure, a natural fire starter that burns like a candle. But what if you found yourself in a shell-cratered field with neither? Well, you used what you had. A bit of cloth, finely frayed rope, maybe a precious piece of cotton from a medical kit. This is where, honestly, modern preparation creates an unassailable advantage. We've taken the principles they learned the hard way and, refined them. The cotton ball slathered in petroleum jelly is really the evolution of that scavenged cloth. It's a manufactured, weatherproof tinder that will ignite from a single spark and burn for minutes, not just seconds. Commercial tinder tabs, dryer lint stored in wax, these, in a sense, are our logistical supply line for fire. We don't have to hope to find birch bark, we carry the equivalent right there in our pockets. And here's the critical takeaway. The soldier's greatest challenge was often not the spark, but honestly finding dry tinder in a universally wet environment. We solve that problem before we even step into the field. So, when you're next in the field, or even just planning your kit, think like that soldier struggling in the rain. Respect the hierarchy. Your ferro rod is your reliable striker, but, well, it's useless without proper tinder. Always carry a waterproof stash of something. Vaseline cotton balls, fat wood shavings, commercial tinders, in multiple places on your person. And remember, the lighter, while convenient, can fail or run out of fuel. The spark-based system is your ultimate backup, just as flint and steel was for them. The goal is always the same, to turn a tiny ember into a life-sustaining flame, to push back the cold and the dark. The tools have evolved, becoming more forgiving, but the fundamental respect for the process, that's a lesson written in the cold mud of history. If this deep dive into the practical realities of survival across the decades resonates with you, if you value seeing history through the lens of the gear and, well, the grit it required, then you're in the right place. Help us keep this channel growing. Subscribe to WARFRONT Survival. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next mission into the past. And share this video with anyone who believes that understanding history is about more than dates. It's about the skills that kept men alive. Until next time, stay sharp and keep your tinder dry.